Welcome to The Sex Matters. I'm Dr. Thuy.
And I'm Jenna Stewart.
In today's episode, we're exploring sexual spontaneity and instincts through intimate exercises in our sex lab. We have a special guest who embodies spontaneity in relationships and sexuality.
We'll discuss generational views on sexual spontaneity, the interplay of masculine and feminine energies, and we'll even touch on spontaneous orgasms.
Get ready for an eye-opening conversation about embracing the unknown in our sexual experiences. Today we're going to be talking about sexual spontaneity and sexual instincts. What are your thoughts, Jenna, on when people are sexually spontaneous or their kind of sexual instincts? What have you seen when we're working in the lab together?
I think that like the spontaneity and instinctual concept has changed with generations. I think maybe now the younger generation, what I've seen with my daughter is that spontaneity and instincts are a little bit more free versus sort of guarded. You know, I think there's an openness now, which leads younger generations into being in situationships where there isn't this context of we have to be in a serious relationship, and it's not programmed the way, say, our parents or our grandparents fell into relationships. So I think there's a lot more spontaneity.
There is a really significant guest that's coming in, and she is in so many ways the epitome of what the topic is. Very spontaneous, very interested in connecting to her own sexual instincts and those of others. She identifies as bisexual, and what's really wonderful is the way that she talks about how she wants to be with people feels really, really important, because sometimes what happens when we are trying to be more spontaneous or when we are trying to tap into our sexual instincts, we are inhibited oftentimes by whatever might be going through in your mind or in your history, and that will impair the intimacy. So judgments, concepts, fears, insecurities, those are really, really significant to be aware of. How open are you to the experience of what is in front of you versus the anticipation of what you think you don't know? So oftentimes therapy is about your relationship to the unknown and how you develop a relationship to the unknown. So when you don't have a relationship to the unknown, you really try to manage that by being anticipatory, but it doesn't work. So it would be kind of like if I said we're all going to get into a car accident and we're in a car together. The moment of impact still is the moment of impact. It isn't, even if you're anticipating what will happen, you're still affected by the moment as it happens. And what I'd like to do is prepare all of you to be more ready to handle whatever comes your way. One of the definitions of being powerful is to have that kind of freedom versus to be governed by something that you think you already know. Then you're not really available for the mystery of what really life offers. I think that she's ready. And what I'd like to do is invite her in and let you hear what she has to say about this topic. Hi. So I was sharing with the group the other day when we were talking about sexual spontaneity and sexual instincts, and we were talking about the difference of people's instinctual drives in men and women. And I thought not only did you have such a beautiful way to describe connection, but also I wanted to get your thoughts on how you experienced it in your own life, your own physical, sexual relationships, your intimate relationships with men and women. So I'll start with, what do you think has been your experience of the difference between men and women and their sexual instincts?
I feel that there are definitely stereotypes to both men and women, but there's always the exceptions to the rule, and there's not a perfect rule book to how men or women act. There's masculine and feminine energies, and they come from, men who are assigned at birth that give a very feminine feeling, and women who are very masculine, and I've experienced kind of a mixture of it all.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel when you are experiencing those different energies? How do you adapt to that?
I find that I'm pretty versed in how I instinctually respond to somebody, and if someone is giving a masculine energy, I am quick to be more feminine, and vice versa. It's very much a dance.
I think sexuality is often a bit of a dance, and it's interesting that you said something really fascinating is you're meeting their energy with the opposite energy. So there's this idea in psychology called the tension of opposites. And what it does is it allows for something to transcend. So how it kind of works is there's one thing and another thing, and those things are the relationship between those things is the tension between those things. And when we're working with the tension of the opposites, for example, yes and no, whatever it is that emerges can be like the third thing. And in sexuality, because of that union, sometimes the experience is very transcendent, and we don't necessarily, the two things that were are no longer, and then something new emerges. Do you remember when you were talking about this really beautiful way that the way that you connect with people isn't always physical? Can you share more about what you were sharing about that, what you were wanting to explain about that?
Yeah, I often do not follow a pattern in how I date and who I date and what they look like or what they do. But I'm very much attracted to the ability to connect and have deep and meaningful conversations, sharing interests, enjoying different activities, and I have friends who kind of make fun of that because I don't have a type. It's very much on how I am connecting with someone and what we have to share. And that's going to be different with every human being. We all have different experiences to bring. And that's what attracts me the most, is when someone can be vulnerable and meet me in, the depths of what their life has brought them and be able to share that.
And then in turn, do you share the same?
Oh, yeah. I maybe overshare.
Yeah. I think that kind of openness is so important, not only in sexual relationships, it really in all relationships. But what would you say allows for people to be more spontaneous with each other, to be more playful and free and really in the present moment?
I mean, I think a lot of fear keeps us from jumping into things. What our should be, in our life, how we are supposed to show up, what is good and wrong and right, and all of those things that we have programmed. I think that's what holds people back. Yeah. And I definitely have my limitations, though I'm sure many would not agree. But I think I think it's pretty simple. It's fear of the unknown, and I'm a person who definitely seeks out the unknown. Mm-hmm. I like new experiences. I like finding my limits. And for me, life is an adventure and a journey, and I have a unquenchable thirst for new experiences.
Well, and that novelty, I think, is also part of the reason I think that you grow, you personally. But beautiful that you brought up the concept of the unknown. Is oftentimes I will talk to people about how we're connecting on an unconscious level, and the fact that you're bringing your own relationship to the unknown when we just talked about that earlier is fascinating, because that is actually what allows for that kind of freedom of experience when you're not wanting to know all the time, that you're open and really available for what is presenting. So the sex lab is an experiential space. And how I like to talk about it is sex is so much more than sex, right? Sex can begin with a glance or a look or a touch. And what it can be is this really beautiful dance. And I was thinking how fun it would be to pull you into the lab and have you dance with some of the patients. So why don't we have you, Jenna, get prepped in the sex lab? So Jenna works as our sexual surrogate, and she's going to be sitting on the couch with her feet on the floor, just in ready position. And what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to walk towards her in just a very deliberately sexy way. And you will take your sweater off, drop it to the ground, and you'll take your right leg and put it on one side of the couch and then the left leg on the other side. And you'll straddle her without touching her in any other way. And then we'll pause. And the work will be, what do you notice about your own sexual instincts towards her and her towards you? What was it like hearing her story about a relationship with the unknown, and here she is demonstrating that? Anything come up for you guys when she shared that?
My own hesitation. I'm really curious how she arrived at that and how open she is about it all, because she was talking about the dancing and the freedom to be able to talk and feel about things. It just made me realize how shut off that part is.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to watch this in action along the way.
I find myself compelled by her like carefree attitude. Like how awesome is it to be so like open and carefree about sexuality and connecting and intimacy with people? It's pretty awesome.
It is.
It was interesting listening to her, and I was thinking, so what is that spark? Where does it come from? Does it come from the energy? Does it come from the connection?
Yeah.
I was sort of saying, okay, so where would this, where does this come from, the attraction? And because she doesn't have a type or something like that. It's sort of interesting to sort of hear what's that thing where she goes,
Yeah.
let's explore this.
What I want to do is I want to set Jenna up there just for safety. So it's really important for me that when we're working the sex lab, that we are optimizing a safe experience. So I want to let her have a first pass at this with Jenna. Okay, let's watch. And then bring your legs together, Jay. Perfect. And then ask her to put her right hand on the couch,
Put your
right
hand
behind
on
your
the
head.
couch, behind my head.
Perfect. And then the other in the same way.
And your left hand?
And just letting you both notice what that feels like. And then we can pause and I'll bring in the next patient.
We're just noticing what it feels like to be in this position.
Cathy, go ahead and find your way into the sex lab.
And then close your legs.
Yep. Have Paula take off her sweater.
Paula, take off your sweater slowly.
And then just have them notice.
And then just notice what's coming up for you. If you're comfortable, you're nervous, excited.
And then
You want
we're
me
going
to
to have
comment?
her pause and come right back. And we're going to do just one more.
Who's coming over, Peter or Jamie?
Let's do Peter.
Peter.
Peter, off you go.
Peter.
He's literally skipping.
He's so excited. Oh, he's skipping over.
Literally skipping.
And then you can drop your sweater.
Go ahead and have her very slowly take her right hand, like we did with you, and stroke the right side of his face.
Paula, take your right hand and just gently stroke the side of his right face. And then Peter, just notice, because we're going to ask you after, just notice what's happening for you right now. Deep breath.
And I'd love for her to let him know what she is feeling about him right now.
Paula, what are you feeling about Peter right now? Like, what is your nervous system saying? Are you completely at peace? Are you feeling his energy?
Definitely, I feel Peter's energy, which is really welcoming. And
He's very
warm
welcoming.
and excited.
Beautiful.
And what does his energy feel like?
I don't want to, run away. Leaning in feels like a good instinct. Yeah, it's comfortable.
He's calm.
Very calm. Very happy.
Have him
He's very
give her
happy.
the line. He's very happy. That is true. Have him give her the line, I really like you.
Peter, tell Paula that you really like her.
I really like it.
And have her respond.
And they're giggling. They're
perfect.
sharing a moment. She's picking lint off his face.
That's nice.
Oh, an eyelash. She's making a wish.
Perfect. I think the wish is happening in the moment, so I think
Yes,
we're good.
the wish is
Yeah.
happening. Okay, we're good.
Perfect. That's a wrap.
All right.
What was that experience like for you?
It's nice. I enjoyed it. I think I tried to walk into it as openly as possible,
Yeah.
as opposed to the fear of the unknown.
Uh-huh.
Because there was a lot of unknowns, like, okay, at least when you went through, I said, okay, well, that's sort of the template that I may be walking into, okay. But I just tried to go in as open as possible, just to whatever experience was going to take place.
Yeah.
So I think that helped.
Yeah.
Just make it, and that was literally a decision.
Perfect. And what did it feel like to let yourself be a little bit more open and a little bit more free?
It was nice. I mean, I think I walk around in my life so controlled.
Yeah.
So I think just allowing myself to be a little bit more open and free,
Yeah.
just that in itself was nice.
Yeah. Great. I love that. I want to invite Jenna back because she's just transitioning from the sex lab. And during that time period, she was checking in about what she said about what Cathy's energy was like.
She said she felt a little bit like she was invading your space, which you probably don't have women sitting on you all the time. So it's a new feeling, right? It's a new sensory, lots of things going on. She felt very comfortable with Peter. Peter, you guys had a moment, you were giggling. It was just kind of like, oh, we're here. And, so, she just felt like this was new for Cathy. So it was, she felt a little invasive.
And what was it like for you, Cathy?
I didn't feel uncomfortable, so I'm surprised that she said that, but that's great feedback. I don't typically have women straddling me, so it is a new experience.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool. It felt really nice. It's, our eye contact was really great, and for me, that's so important in connecting with someone, so that felt really good to me.
Great. I love that. How did it feel hearing the feedback specifically around that someone's intruding your space, like moving into your space?
I feel like that's something I obviously need to work on because if she's experiencing it, my sexual partners out in the wild might be experiencing that too. And so I'd like to be more inviting and not make people feel like they're invading my space.
And it may not be necessarily that it's true, meaning her observation might be that she's invading your space because it's new, so that if you two were in conversation, it might be, actually, I wanted to be very open. It's just, oh, maybe it's not invasive, it's that it's new.
Got it.
So we want to be cautious if someone's giving us feedback that we aren't just changing necessarily or shifting or adapting. I'd want more conversation to make sure that what is being said is what is actually being felt, versus she's just like, oh, it's new, and so maybe she wanted to be careful and considerate of your space. So I just want all of us to be really aware of, it's important to be in alignment with the people that we're interacting with, but stay really solid about what did you feel and was that really what you were doing? Because knowing you, I know that you would have been welcoming, but it might have felt different to her in whatever way.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or feelings that people had?
I had a thought as Peter skipped out. I reflected back to a moment where it's the anticipation of the first kiss.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what that happens with the kiss, it's that moment preceding it,
Yeah.
which for me is so overwhelmingly exciting. And I felt as Peter was walking out, it was the same kind of thing.
You're like
I don't know
feeling
what's gonna
it for
happen, but I'm ready for it. This will be great.
Yeah, anticipation is always very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So I did an interview this week with a woman. She's in her 70s, and she has something called persistent genital arousal disorder, spontaneous orgasm. So her story is that when she was 5 years old, she began to experience these intense orgasms, and they would be predicated on stress. So she would feel stress when there was some kind of pressure that was put on her. So her first memory was when she was getting ready to go on a family trip, and everybody is in the car, and she was not quite ready. And her body reacted to the stress by going through an orgasmic pleasure cycle. And throughout her life, that became the way that she coped with stress. So the spontaneity of the orgasm became a way for her to handle different situations when there was pressure on her. And it's really interesting to hear this because we think of orgasm as always really positive and something that you want, but we don't quite think about it as something that she talked about it as it would happen, and she was taking a math test in school, and she would have to allow for it to go through a cycle. Now, for many people, an orgasm is only maybe a few seconds, maybe a few minutes. Her orgasms would be an hour and a half. And when she was younger,
It's exhausting.
exhausting, exactly. They would be about 10 to 20 minutes, and she would go into these tests like as a teenager or in college, and she would have to wait for them to pass. But it's just a really interesting dynamic because we think about these things in the ways that we know them, and part of the work that we're doing here is to help you think about things in new and more multifaceted ways. And so it is amazing to think about an orgasm, and then we think about this other concept, and it's exactly what Jenna
Exhausting.
said, exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that bring up anything for any of you?
The thought is how distracting that would be to have this stressful. How do you? And it sounds odd to say, but how do you cope with that?
Yeah.
How do you develop a strategy over time? I mean, I like the idea that she was able to say, "Oh, I need 10 to 20 minutes before I can get into this."
Yeah.
What do you do in a pop quiz? I mean,
This is a good question. Yeah.
It's odd to take something that seems so pleasurable and turn it into something which you have to kind of overcome.
I'm going to demonstrate actually what she did with Jenna. So Jenna, put your feet together on the floor and your knees together, hands on your knees, okay? And what she did was, the way that she coped was she actually squeezed her body together, her legs together, really, really tight, so that her entire body was incredibly tight, and that's how she would amplify the orgasm.
Nothing's
And then-
happening. I want it to happen.
Keep going, keep going. And then she would release.
Did she
But-
need to have the stress to have the orgasm?
Yeah.
It's a
At
trigger.
all time.
Occasionally, it would be spontaneous. The other thing that's really fascinating, though, so that was a great question, because that methodology, squeezing your whole body together, amplified the orgasm, and it allowed for the cycle to complete. So the only way that it would complete is through that methodology for her. Whether it was, and I think she adapted it to, she enjoyed it, she got to know it in a certain way, got to know this aspect of herself. Interestingly, the self-induced orgasm was better than the orgasms that she had in partnerships. And that would create a lot of interesting relationship dynamics. But that would be the way that she would get through that. Any other thoughts or questions about it?
I wanted to just speak quickly on instinct, because I was talking to a client of mine that we were talking about when you go out on a first date, and this is for men and women, is when the man is getting a different, getting different feedback than the woman is. So, per se, the woman is going, this has been the second date, and I think I'm done. I'm not interested. He's going, oh, it's the second date. We had such great conversation, and now I'm walking her out to her car. I'm going off your anticipation of the kiss, and you're going, oh my God, this is exciting. It's going to be the first kiss. Meanwhile, in her head, she's going, how do I get out of this situation? Because I don't want to kiss him. But for my experience talking to women, my peers, our instinct is to just kiss him, get it over with, and never talk to him again. And so I think like a new generation and being more communicative in sex and intimacy and everything is making sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to that first kiss, right? So you're like, does she feel the same way? You know, you're being a gentleman, you're like, I'd really like to kiss you right now. And for us women to not do the instinct of just get it over with, but to go with the higher self instinct of, I think I'd like to just give you a hug and say goodnight. And be okay with that, because a lot of women, they feel bad, they go home, they're like, oh gosh, I made him feel bad, but it's really just like speaking up and saying, I don't feel the same way, or, thank you, this has been lovely, I think you're great, is to really like hone in on what that instinct's really telling you to do, both men and women, in a situation where you may not feel the same as the person sitting across from you that is feeling different than you are. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's my thought on instinct, is to really like be okay saying, I don't have the same instinct as you.
Yeah, otherwise you end up in this situation
Yeah.
where you're trying to accommodate what's going on.
Right.
And then
Accommodation is perfect. Yeah, it's a
you
good
kinda go
word.
through this, like, how did we end up dating?
And then you leave that date thinking, that was great, we had a kiss, I'm gonna see her again, and I leave that date going, block, done. And then you feel bad because you don't hear from me again when you thought it was great.
Well, great job today. I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey through loss, healing, and sexual identity on the Sex Matters.
Our special guests shared insights on connecting beyond physical types, while participants like Peter discovered the joy of being open to new experiences.
We also touched on the challenges of persistent genital arousal disorder. Remember, embracing the unknown in sexuality can lead to powerful connections.
This is Dr. Thuy and Jenna Stewart signing off.
I thought I'd be a lot more apprehensive and a lot more nervous than I actually was. I think going into it, I said, okay, well, let's just be open and see what this looks like. Because I could have easily been like, all right, what are they gonna do? Who is this? What's this gonna be like? All those sort of negative things. And instead I just said, well, let's go have some fun. Let's see what this is gonna be. And I just walked into it assuming it would be fun. And I think that's that. I could have walked into it like, okay, what are they gonna do? and be very apprehensive and closed down. And I think I would have had there would have been something very different that took place there. With the guest, it was very comfortable to be with her. So I think that's part of what she brought to this, was she was very comfortable, very warm, very friendly. So it was not an experience, it was not a negative experience at all. And part of that was her energy. And I think sort of thinking about, she was very much, okay, here's my energy, what's your energy? So it was a very opening, welcoming experience.